Now that you've written your primary user questions and also hopefully potentially interviewed them, you should be starting to think about stakeholders. Now, stakeholders are incredibly important to a project as they know customers, they know their problems, they have an idea about marketability and how products are going to sell, and that is of really vast importance, particularly if you are looking to get into the higher mark bands for your NEA. So around the edge of this page, a number of stakeholders are going to appear, and I would just like you to have a look at them and think about who might apply to your project, who's going to have the most impact on the wants and needs that are going to come out of it. So we have material and component suppliers, investors, schools, manufacturers, the government, retailers, distributors, and designers. Now, there are lots of options and different ones may apply to different projects. Retailers is always a good one to look at because there are lots of shops out there, they know what their customers want. But you may also be looking at end users like schools, the government, the NHS, people that get products out to a lot of people and will see the impact that they have. Now you've had a look at the broad list of stakeholders, I want you to consider the following questions. Who might the stakeholders be for my art storage product? Now remember, we've been using the same design brief throughout this and we've been looking at people who travel and want to travel with art products. The stakeholders for this can be general or specific. So you might have thought about looking at retailers like Hobbycraft, like WH Smith. You might have thought about looking at people in universities who have students who travel far distances. There are lots of different options. But try and pick something that really focuses in on your design brief. Now you've had to think about mine, have a think about your own. Who might a stakeholder be for your project? Try and be a little bit more specific at this point. Hopefully you have chosen a stakeholder by now. But what I would like to say is that you should be contacting real companies for your stakeholder interview. It is going to be much more helpful if you pick somebody that is real and can give you real advice, real information, real wants and needs for your customers. It's going to be much more valuable information in the first place, but equally, you know you're going to get information that's going to drive your project forwards. Now, there are going to be people in your class that you have got similar contexts to, and it would be sensible if everyone didn't contact the same company. So maybe have a little bit of a chat with anybody that's doing something similar and see who they're thinking about contacting. Charities are usually really good at responding if it fits with your brief, so have a think about whether you can utilise those. In terms of getting in contact with the companies, if you're going for real companies in the first place, think about using social media, the chat functions on websites, but also think about sending an email. Sometimes it's really good for people to be able to look at an email and think, I'll come back to that tomorrow when I've had a think about it. And if they don't get back to you, you are going to be able to create a persona, but that is going to have to be made absolutely clear in your NEA. So, a persona is where you interview somebody that you know in real life and they pretend to be your stakeholder. So, they're going to have a different name, a different age, and will work for whichever company suits your brief. So, your friend's name may be Daisy, but in your persona, you're going to give them a name of a different person and they're going to really pretend to be that person. Please try and choose someone that's going to give you professional answers to your questions. So that may mean going to talk to a teacher, it may be an adult or a friend that you trust to give you some really direct wants and needs for the product that you are going to design. If you're interviewing a person and they're just kind of giving you wishy-washy answers and stuff that doesn't really fit with your brief, then they're not going to function very well as a persona. They potentially take you into the higher mark band for this section. In fact, they likely will do. So make sure that you are really making sure that whoever you pick for this is going to be absolutely on it and is going to make sure that they give you what you need. Now, in order to help you contact your stakeholders, I want you to use the below pro forma and fill in the blanks if you're going to email companies. It is really important that when you email these companies, you do so professionally because you've got a much higher chance of them responding if you email them in kind of the correct way, making sure you're using professional language, making sure you're being clear about what it is you want, but also being concise and not waffling. So below you can see kind of an outline of a letter that you can use. At the top it says Dear Sir and Madam, but if you know the name of the person, please do use it. And underneath, you've got several blanks that you can fill in with your context and brief, and a few bits that you might need to delete or change, like where it says Milton Keynes / the UK. Obviously put the UK if you're emailing somebody abroad, Milton Keynes if it's somebody in the UK. As before with the primary user slide, you're going to need to really clearly put your questions into a box that is titled and maybe with the keywords in your questions underlined. You're also going to need a stakeholder profile with photo, name, age, job, etc. The person may not be willing to give you a photo, so in this instance, I don't mind if you use a photo from Google. You're going to need evidence of the interview and then analysis of the interviews, just like before with the primary user page. So, on to writing your questions. With this, I want you to aim for 6 to 8 questions. I would say definitely no more than 8. 6 is probably a good number to aim for. People are more likely to respond to you if you aren't sending them really long sections of questions. So make sure that what you're doing is to the point and gets you exactly what you need to know. Remember to relate your questions to your design brief and ask a few questions about the problems that their customers and users face surrounding your context and what makes it a problem for them. They're going to be able to give you some really good information about that problem, about the kinds of things that people buy, the kind of things that they want to see in a product. So again, try and write a few of your own first. Those are the ones really that surround your design brief. And then if you are stuck, again, you can use the potential starters underneath and ask questions like, can you give me a description of your typical customer? What do your customers look for in a product that does X? Does your company have any sustainability or ethical goals I should consider when designing my product? Is there anything in particular you would like to see included? How much would your customers be willing to pay? There are lots of different questions that you can ask, but whatever you ask, make sure that you are going to get some really clear and definable wants and needs to fill in your wants and needs table.